Welcome to Sarder TV. I'm Lindsay Christian. I'm thrilled to introduce the special episode we created with the New York Hall of Science. In this special presentation, you'll experience a critical discussion about young women entrepreneurs as a part of the exclusive screening event of Nora Pogge's groundbreaking film, She Started It. Now in its 5th year, this annual event continues the conversation of how we can work together creatively and effectively to support girls and young women in the pursuit of STEM careers and subjects. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone. Did you know that women have been discovered as entrepreneurs, as investors, as business owners? It's a good thing, right? I am Jean Sullivan. I am a longtime venture capital investor, and I've been fighting for this for a long time, meaning change and for this discovery. The sad news is we haven't made much progress. But the good news is there is some hope, and there's many things we can do, and that's part of what we're talking about tonight. I am proud to be on the board of trustees of this wonderful New York Hall of Science, and thank you for being part of this. Fighting for women, sponsoring women, helping women, it's my #1 passion, and most of you who know me know I have a very close second passion. I have to sneak this in. You do know I'm using science and technology, the STEM part of all that in the cannabis industry. This is thrilling. It is about science, technology, laws. I had to put that in. So tonight we're talking about what can we do, what is going on. And this is the 5th annual event of these Women in STEM programs. Good for you, and I'm proud to say I have been to all 5. And that's due to the hard work of Karen Hoffman, her team, Amy, who's so fabulous, pulling this together. And look, filled the room. So thank you for being here and making it special. Yes, thank you. Now, look around. Look at the powerful women, and I see a few good men. And I see wonderful girls who are very much part of learning STEM and adopting it, realizing it. You know why? Because it is the road, and it certainly has been that for me and many of us in this room, to professional and personal happiness and prosperity. That's what STEM and STEAM, adding that A for the arts, does. And see, people are getting that finally, so that's pretty cool. So I am appalled, and I want you to be appalled, that there are only 24 women as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, down from 32. Not going the right direction, right? I'm appalled that women entrepreneurs only get 2.2% last year of all venture capital funding. This is terrible. I am appalled that we are not sitting in the executive ranks of most companies or on the compensation committee and the core team, because we, and you may know this, women make 85 to 90% of the purchase decisions. We decide what our husbands wear or don't wear. My husband certainly knows that. Oh, gee, my single guy friend doesn't have to have his wife telling him what to wear, he says to me all the time. We make the healthcare decisions. We buy for our children. We make the insurance decisions, our homes, our cars. But we're not in the decision-making of these companies. I'm appalled. I want you to be appalled. And so what can we do about it? There's only one of the issues you made is only 10% of the decision makers in venture capital firms are women. It takes women to understand, guess what? Why? We have a different lens in which we look at businesses. And that's why it's important. And it takes women investors oftentimes, certainly not always, to understand that, what women even need, what these women business owners and entrepreneurs are all about, because we're not like them. We call it the khaki brigade, to be very irreverent. So, all right. So, what can make a change? It's about sponsorship by men, certainly, for women in the workplace, and sponsorship of women to other women, so important. It's about teaching and emboldening young girls. Did you know it happens in the 3rd and 4th grade? Girls drop back if it's too hard or they can't do it. You know what boys do? They say, I gotta learn this. I have to learn this. They don't care if they get a bad grade, but girls do. The research proves this. So what does it take to fix that? It takes men and women to understand this and embolden our young girls to seek those STEM subjects. And as I said earlier, that could lead to prosperity personally and professionally and a lot of happiness. And it's so exciting that that is known. And here we are, because we are this group. We all care about that. So that's pretty cool. So we're talking about just that tonight. I want to thank the trustees that are here tonight in the New York Hall of Science. Such a wonderful group. I've often said it's the best kept secret in New York. It's a wonderful place. And if you haven't taken your kids there, please do. I can't get my little kids out of there. And so that kind of goes to this group. Who can fix all this? It is those of us, men and women. It's those of us as grandparents. I love sharing that when I take my 2 little monkeys to Maker Fair, which I love and they love, but they insist on going into the museum. So I think that's pretty cool. So I want to thank not only the trustees, as I just did, but the President's Council members who are here tonight. We're a special group that puts on these kinds of events. How wonderful. We welcome you if you're so interested to join us. We also want to give a special thanks to Cognizant, who is our host tonight, and Catherine Nash. Catherine, are you here? Just raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've been sponsoring this consistently throughout. So, this is a wonderful film you're about to see that showcases young women. It shows their struggles, tech entrepreneurs, what you have to go through. I mean, it's plenty. By the way, this is just a shortened version. I wondered that, and I told Amy I'd share that. Now, tonight, and right after the film, we're going to have a great discussion. And I believe in that term, radical transparency. So let's be open with each other and honest about what can and can't we do. What are some of the hardships? I think it's fun to share that. So you'll hear from these wonderful people when we have our discussion. But let me just tell you who's here. My friend, and I'm so proud that Victoria Pettibone's here tonight. I serve on the NYSCI Board of Trustees, and that is a group that funds women-founded companies, and that's pretty neat. We've done, more than 90 financings. It's pretty amazing. And Victoria's an executive team member in building a fund for that, so that's pretty neat. Women-founded companies. Suma Reddy, you are the co-founder of Farm Shelf, and that's pretty exciting. I'll talk to you later about growing you know what. Jenny, I met you several years ago. I'm in awe of your amazing background. You're just such a respected entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and such a great story. And Anna, I'm so proud to be with you on the board here, as well as part of ASTIA. You're a wonderful, long time, get this, CIO of the NASDAQ, excuse me, and smiling because she's now able to go back and forth to her wonderful home in Florida, and it's just wonderful to have you here, and you are moderating tonight. So, how's that for a pretty good evening? So, thank you again for being here, and let's roll that film. The New York Hall of Science has many programs, and in my enthusiasm, I failed to mention a couple that are just great that fit right in. One is the Science Career Institute, which is so amazing, and there's some wonderful young women who are part of that, and we call them explainers, which I love that term. I think it's so great, and the work you do is just wonderful. The second is a program, Girls in Tech, which is supported by BNY Mellon, and our wonderful fellow trustee Jim Weiner is here tonight, as well as Yvonne Tran Weinberg, who are sponsors of this program, teaching middle school girls and high school girls how to code as well as create apps, and then actually pitching to investors. So how great is that? So let's get on to the next part, and I welcome to the stage wonderful Nora Poggi, who is the producer and director of this film. Come on up to the front. Anna Ewing, who is moderating this. And come on up, Victoria, Jenny, and Suma. Come to the front.
Wow. It's actually the second time I've seen the film, and I'm still just blown away by how inspirational these women are. And kudos to you, Nora, for making the film. And tell us a little bit about how you did it. What made you decide to make this film? And a little bit about yourself personally.
Sure. Well, my name is Nora Poggi, so I'm the director and producer alongside with NYSCI, who is my co-founder, and she's back in Palo Alto, so she can't be here. But so we were both journalists in Silicon Valley in 2013. The film is, it's been 5 years since we started this journey, almost 6 years, so hopefully some things changed, but some have not, which we'll talk about. But we were basically covering the tech industry as reporters and ended up deciding, okay, let's actually make this an inspirational tool. Let's create storytelling around the women that we see that do exist, because they were a couple, obviously. And we realized there's no way to change this without changing representation, creating new role models. So it really started with that idea of representation and role models. So the film was a crazy journey. We filmed them for 3 years, and then we've been touring with the film for 2 years. We showed it about 400 venues in over 30 countries. It's not online, so if you want to host a screening, you have to do it special screening. But yeah, so I'm excited to hear what you all have to say.
Great. Well, why don't we do that? And Jenny, why don't you tell us about your journey as an entrepreneur and some of what you're doing today at Techstars?
Oh, wow. How long do I have now? I've been an entrepreneur since I was maybe 27. First-time mother, had a 4-month-old, and decided it was a good idea to start a company, and my husband thought I was crazy. But I started out in college as an applied math major, and my mother is eternally disappointed because she can't imagine what you would do with math. Parents used to say to me all the time, "What are you going to do with that?" It's like, "Oh, more than you're going to do with your degree in Middle Eastern history." But I always found that I was often the only woman in the room in my math classes. I went to Union College in the first 10 years of Union being allowing women to go there. So it was 70% men when I was there, so there were no women in the math classes. And I think that it's just something I always was used to and never really paid much attention to. So, but started my first company when I was 27, sold it when I was in my 30s, and have been doing lots of different things since then. Worked in venture capital for a little bit as an EIR, and I left venture capital after 9/11 because I thought maybe I didn't want to run back and raise the next $1 million, and bought a bookstore and a coffee shop and did that for about 8 years.
Where?
In Greenwich, Connecticut. Greenwich, Connecticut can afford a small local bookstore.
On Elm Street.
No, it was before Elm Street. I helped start that bookstore too. And then due to a divorce and lots of issues, I really had to go back to work. Had a divorce that wiped out all of the money that I made in selling my company, and had to go back to work. So went back into the world of tech. I never thought that I could work for anyone after having been a CEO and owner of my own business, but found out that I really love to be in service to entrepreneurs who are growing and learning, and ended up at MakerBot, my third job. After that, when we just closed a $10 million round with the Foundry Group, and ended up selling it 18 months later for $600 million, $400 million sale with a $200 million earnout. I told my mother that it was the second biggest deal in New York that year, and she said, "Yeah, what was the first?"
What was the first?
I don't know. My mother's never sure that I've had a real job, and she, often questions me, "Are you going to get a real job? Like, when are you going to do that?" I really do have a real job. So, I'm now the COO at Techstars, and Techstars is the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed, and we are very focused on growing the entrepreneurial ecosystem around the world and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to do what they want to do.
Great, thank you. Suma.
So Jenny is who I want to be when I grow up. Not kidding. So my entrepreneurial journey, I guess I would say post-college, where I studied econ and religion, took me to West Africa and Mali and the Peace Corps, and that was where I kind of got an interest in things that were impact-driven, whether it's environmental or social justice, clean tech, anything like that. Then went to India, was a early employee at a microfinance company that gave loans to women pre-funding, so was there on the management team when we funded or raised $1 million, and then a few years later exited, or was a $2.2 billion valuation. So got to be part of sort of a growth story and felt really fortunate about that. Then went on to business school at Wharton to try to like become more professional because people said it was a little rough around the edges. So did that whole thing, hung out with finance people and consultants. And then after that, co-founded an anaerobic digestion company that's organic waste to energy. Tried to do that for 6 years, working with governments in the US. It was very, very trying. So kind of left that, but was also able to dabble into early stage utility scale solar and hydro development, and did a couple exits there. Post that, jumped into sort of new tech as I had sort of learned of it, and huge imposter syndrome, very insecure. So I was like, I'm gonna learn UX design, and I'm like, that's not enough. So I was like, I'll learn iOS development because I'm a woman and people are gonna think I'm dumb. So I need to learn software engineering. So I was the worst person in the class, but I got through it. Kind of did a mobile app for a little bit. Didn't last long. My co-founder actually and cousin passed away. So hashtag startup struggles. And now I'm a co-founder at Farm Shelf. And so we are an indoor farming company. We build bookshelf-sized indoor farms for restaurants, corporate cafeterias. Like BNY Mellon is actually going to be a future customer. The Met, Red Rooster, American Express, Tender Greens, all of those, B2B customers, eventually consumer customers, trying to make it easier for people to grow their own food. So intersection of hardware, controlled environment, agriculture, food technology, and we've raised about $5 million to date, have a 15-person team.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I love that.
And Victoria, full disclosure, my fellow Astia
Yes.
Angel.
Yes. So I also had an entrepreneurial start. I ran a social enterprise in the media space, producing theater and developing film projects written by women, so always focused on women. Did that for 11 years. And then I thought I might go to microfinance. I left that and was doing a career change and thought that microfinance was the road not taken because I had spent time in Cameroon when I was in college and in Kenya when I was in high school. And learning about microfinance, but very quickly realized that the desk job in New York City was so far removed from the entrepreneurs that it just wasn't interesting to me. And one thing led to another, and I started learning about angel investing, and in particular angel investing in women entrepreneurs, and that was really exciting to me. It had that hands-on quality. I could bring my entrepreneurial background to bear, and also I could do it here in New York City. And I just started my family. I had my daughter, and so that all made sense. So I became involved with Astia first as a volunteer, and then got pulled in by Sharon, who we saw very briefly there. She's very enigmatic, and she pulls people in. And I've been here for 6 years. I'm managing director. I run all of our investments. I run the angel group, and now we are raising a fund, so I'm now in the fundraising mode, feeling the pain and the joy of that, but loving it. It's been terrific. And Astia, I should just give a little more background, is an organization that is looking to level the playing field for women entrepreneurs and teams that include women. We do this through investment and also by connecting entrepreneurs with an advisory network. And I'm based in here in New York. We have offices in San Francisco and London, and we operate globally.
An impressive panel, don't you agree? And what's amazing to me is how diverse each and every one's background is, in terms of the journey you've each taken, but also amongst the four of you. So that's a very inspirational for all of you young girls and entrepreneurs in the room. There are many paths to take to entrepreneurial success. So that's the good news. Let's talk about the not so good news and the state of the industry. Now, so Nora, you made this film. You said it took you over a 3-year journey. It was around 2014, 2015.
We started in 2013.
Okay, so, and there were a lot of stats, in the film, and certainly Jean talked about some earlier, so I'm not going to repeat them. But really, the needle hasn't moved much since that film. The dialogue is the same, and more, it's not just a societal issue or social impact issue. It's quite frankly an economic issue. And if you look at the gap of jobs that require STEM skills between now and 80% of the jobs of the future will be some requirement for STEM skills, and yet we have, the latest stats was 26% of people in the tech industry, tech and math, are women, 26%, and that really number hasn't changed much. So something is broken. So, Nora, I want to start with you because you've been doing this journey, not just in filming the film, but in the tour after. What are you seeing, and what are some of the things that you can talk about in terms of the broken ecosystem? And then we will come back and talk about things that we can do, or that you have personally are doing to help fix it.
I think since we finished the film, we premiered in 2016, and we've been, like I said, touring for now, I guess, 2 years and a half. We went to schools, universities, corporations, conferences, you name it, like I said, around the world, like 30, 35 countries. What now I think is the priority after having seen a lot of things, that's why I'm excited for this panel, is really access to capital. And obviously the film shows it, so it was not rocket science to figure that out, but just noticing how small the changes have been, and that's why I'm excited for NYSCI and other groups like that to exist, but the idea that we have to diversify investment. When we started the film, a lot of the conversation was, oh, let's get women, the lean-in movement, let's get women to be more confident, to pitch differently, to be brave like the boys, etc. And now, thankfully, the conversation is more around systemic issues, like, okay, we can do our part, but what about the rest of the society? Like, how do we actually break down those barriers that are keeping women, especially women of color, from getting funded? So now there's a lot happening on that, on that front, and that's where I think we should keep, pushing to get really to change the dialogue. But I would love to hear from our fellow experts.
So Jenny, over to you.
I think it's tough. I found it's the first time I've seen the movie. I've known about it for a while, but certainly a little depressing. And the impact of Me Too on it was also super interesting. I think that really stuck out. That there is a big change, and there's a big change that even through the movie, there's the impact of Me Too in that movie, which I think has been interesting. So I think that there's a much higher awareness and I think that we've moved the needle more than we think that we have. When I think about women have only been allowed to borrow money in the United States on their own without their husband's signature since the 70s.
76.
Yeah, that's not a long time. And so when you look at what's going on in the world today with women, it's actually it's a bigger change than we think when you look at the short time period that we're covering compared to men who've been eternally allowed to be in charge of their own destiny and be in charge of their own financial space. So I am hopeful for where we are, but I think that there is a lot of I feel very, very clearly that there's a lot of division in the space, and I feel like women are very separated from each other, and they're not sure what movement to join or how to get somewhere, and their access to big capital is very limited. And until we get access to big capital for women, I think that we're not going to move the needle further than we want. So we need the funds of funds, and we need them to be attached to big money. Because until we start playing at that same level, we're not going to make the change. That's where I look at it.
Suma?
Yeah, those are great points. So I guess I have a couple thoughts on this. One from the vantage point of having, tried to raise before as a CEO and now as a COO, and, seeing who our funders are. And so on the latter part, right, with Farm Shelf, we've raised $5 million. Not one of them is a woman. And our CEO, love him, Andrew, tall, good-looking, dirty blonde, blue-eyed, like Patagonia wearing, just like on the cover of Forbes. Like he will be on the cover of Forbes one day. And the people we attract as funders are the CEO of Goldman Sachs, the CEO of Levi's, the CEO of Albertsons. Like, love walking into a room with them because they're these polished men, well-dressed, super fit, right? But like attracts like, and that is literally all of our funders. And that's not to say like, you know, he is working his ass off to get money, and he is working incredibly hard, but I think it's very interesting that we've raised $5 million and there's not one woman or one person of color in it. And so, you know, it speaks to a stereotype, right? And there is truth behind it. Yeah, and so I guess for me as a CEO, I'm kind of benefiting from that in the sense that like that's his strength, and that for me I can run the business, right? And that's where I'm sitting in. But I think there is hope. I think I look at my friends who have funded and have raised, most of them like 2 or 3 or 4 million at this point, who are women, and they're going through alternative channels, angel funds, non-VCs usually, family offices, things like that. And I think there's a lot of energy there. And even for Farm Shelf, we are not a VC fundable company, so everything we do also is through these alternative channels, which are incredibly powerful and oftentimes better. Yeah.
So Victoria, can you talk a little bit more about the VC world in particular? And you know, Jean talked earlier about the 2.2% of VC funding going to women-led companies.
And I learned last night's 0.0006 to women of color founders, Black and Latina.
Which
0.0006.
Yeah, which barely even registers on the scale.
Yeah.
So can you give a little bit more color into that and also how ASTIA is trying to change that dialogue, not just specifically how you support the women entrepreneurs, but what you're doing proactively in the community.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with that. I mean, one of the things we always say is don't fix the women. We don't need to fix the women. We need to fix the ecosystem. And so network is really what we're focused on. That networks still divide along gender so much, and by socioeconomic status and by race, but we're really focused on this gender divide in the networks, and really focused on making sure that our network brings men and women together to the table. So our angel group is about half men, half women. And when we do events, we're making sure that we're doing our best to appeal to men and women, because it really is about tapping into those people you otherwise couldn't tap into. And something you brought up, or I think has been brought up a couple times, is also opening the door for somebody. You know, if you are able to get into the room, bringing somebody who can't get into the room is so important. One of our entrepreneurs was talking about that the other day, about how, you know, that's what made the difference to him. He's the CEO of this company is a male, he's a black male, and then one of the other co-founders is a woman, which is why it qualifies for ASTIA. And he talked about, you know, how, were you in the meeting with Derek where he said he had an expression for it, was helping flag the taxi cab. And he said that he would tell his advisors, look, you can get into these meetings, so bring me, make sure I'm there with you. And I think that's really important for us all to do, is open the door. If you can open the door, open it for somebody who can't. So that's what we're doing. You know, with the VC community, you know, what I hear is that things have actually gotten a bit worse, that there's almost a backlash happening because of all of the Me Too movement in the press, and that it sounds like things are maybe going a little backwards right now in Silicon Valley. So, you know, we're just doing what we can to keep forging ahead, and I completely agree that, you know, we need the women to have these huge successes. They need to get the big funding so they can have the big exits before we really start to change attitudes.
Yeah, and just, you know, that whole concept of network in play, we were actually standing, you know, before we started the film, just chatting amongst us, And we were like, oh, I want to introduce you to this person, and oh yeah, let's do that, let's follow up on. And that was just a 5-minute dialogue. I knew, Victoria, but the rest of us had just met for the first time. So the power of that network is not to be underestimated. And each one of you in this room represent a network, or 2 or 3, that you can engage and help others engage in. So that's a very powerful statement. I think, Jenny, you summarized that really well. I don't know if you want to talk about the comments you made about the power of one.
I don't remember what comment I
It
made.
was profound.
It was profound.
Well, no, you talked about the divide. We're
Oh
divided.
yeah, the divide. I mean,
Yeah.
I just think that there's power in numbers, and I also was telling Anna that I've been watching The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm obsessed with it at the moment, and it really comes out starkly there how when you come together, they can make some change happen, and when you don't, they're very alone and very divided. So I think. One of the things I've talked about in growing up in the world of high tech, I always hated this concept of identifying as being different because I was a woman, and so sort of really fought that, didn't used to speak about it, didn't used to represent at all, but also talked about the concept of sort of getting the high heel in the face. And there's nothing more that really turned me off than a woman who was in a successful position who shut the door and said, I got here, go away, this is mine. And so I really I decided that it really did matter, like watching little girls, having little girls come up to me and say, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that math? And I did that math because my high school math teacher told me that girls couldn't do math and I'd fail. And I said, F that. But a lot of little girls won't say that. And so I realized that it does make a difference. And so I have made it, something that's important to, if someone asks, I will always respond. I will always reach out, especially if it's a woman. And so that Techstars is built on the ethos of give first, and we really live that. And I think it's critical. If we're all going to succeed, we have to stay together. We just cannot divide each other.
Yeah. So go ahead, Suma.
I was going to say, I thought something that was interesting in Nora's film is, and resonated with me, I feel that as women or any underrepresented group, there's this feeling that beyond the product, beyond the technology, beyond the companies, it's how can we serve as examples to others. And maybe men feel that way too, but I feel like every single person I speak to is like, we are doing this almost 50% so that we can move the needle forward. That, like, my dream is to invest in other, underrepresented communities and arts and companies and things like that. And on the networking thing, I just wanted to sort of share my experience where the reason I even was able to get into tech was by joining Lesbians Who Tech, right, which is this really powerful network that allowed me to meet Aileen Lee, right, and other people, the CEO of Salesforce and things like that, and founded a group called Women Who Hardware, where because of that connection met, a future manufacturer and things like that. And so if it's not happening, just found it yourself, is what many of the people in this room should just do, because you can just make it happen yourself.
Okay, great. So certainly you were all great examples of successful women and entrepreneurs. The girls in the film certainly were inspiring, and then the perseverance that they had and the passion was just unbelievable. And there are very many stories in between where it's a real. That's the short version, right? Yeah, I want to know what happened to those other two girls. So there's a lot in between. So one of the things that struck me when I started investing with Ask the Angels is the women entrepreneurs were not just the young first-time women. These were serial entrepreneurs, very seasoned, very professional, highly educated, but still at the end of the day having trouble funding. So getting funding for their next series. So it's not just a youth thing or a startup thing. It's an ongoing challenge Can we talk a little bit more about your specific experience? And we'll start with you,
Well, yeah,
Victoria.
I'll jump in. I mean, what I think is amazing is seeing some of the women who have had huge successes already. They've done their angel round, they've done their Series A, now they're at their Series B, they're hitting their milestones, and they still cannot get funded. And it's still so much harder than it is for the men. There's a real gap right now in that Series A, Series B. There's a lot of angel funding. There's a lot of alternative funding sources coming for the early stage. There certainly can be more, but there are more options to start. But once you get going, there's actually fewer options at that Series A, Series B level because the big funds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're going upstream, and then there's the angels down here, and there's this window, and I think it's getting harder and harder for the women to raise in that window. So that's a real problem that I'm seeing. Start there.
Suma, anything to add to that?
I'll let Jenny
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't actively raised money in a while, but certainly I've seen a lot of female entrepreneurs actively raising money, and it's hard. And it's hard because there are not that many women out there in the VC world who have the big money that when you get outside of the seed stage. We spend time working on educating our investors and our ecosystem as well as our founders on making sure that the language is right and teaching the women how to flip the language around so that they're talking back to the investors in the language that they would be using with men, and really trying to change the dialogue with that. I found it interesting when we were raising money at MakerBot. We were running a really tight fundraising around six weeks between East Coast, West Coast. We were raising about a $50 million round before Stratasys stepped in. And I was leading that round, and I was shocked at the treatment I got from major top shelf VCs who I wanted to talk to the person who was. They would only want to talk to Bree. They wouldn't want to talk to me. It was clear, and Bree was very clear that I was the one running the process. They also thought that I was the admin, and they would call me to schedule things and make sure that and it was still. I mean, this was only 5 years ago. Just walking into the room expecting to not be at the table. They would turn and talk to Bree, and it was really an interesting exercise because he would have to redirect them all. Very, very different than doing a deal with an Israeli company where the men walked into the room and had no problem with the fact that Bree was in the room and it was me that they were going to talk to. It was stunning difference. So I think that there's a lot to learn, and I think that it made me sad to hear the comments of that girl's mother, because it was how my mother always was, like, I had a company that was a multi-million-dollar company that was going to sell for millions of dollars, and she kept saying, you should maybe join the local, Red Cross board so that you can build your resume. I'm like, build my resume? And so there's just this disconnect, and the messages that come through are so. I know people don't realize what they're saying, and the messages that are being delivered. Every woman in tech should go to Grace Hopper once to see, just to see 10,000 women in a room together who are in technology is mind-blowing.
So, I mean, clearly we're just touching the surface tonight, and there's a lot more for us to think about and act upon. So we want to open it up for Q&A for the rest of you, but before we do that, I want each of you to have a call for action that you would like from this group. We've got educators, philanthropists, investors, corporate companies, parents, grandparents. So, call to action. You've got a captive audience. Let's start with you, Nora.
Well, I think it's at the bigger structures instead of trying to fix the women. So if you have access to capital, or if you know people who do, really trying to change the faces of people who invest, trying to get people in the room who could invest for different, so that we can invest in different types of founders. So now there's groups of women-led funds. You guys are raising a fund, which is amazing. There's a lot more happening, so support that. I thought it was really interesting what you said about the funds of funds. It's like, yeah, how do we even raise funds? Like if we can't even get access to the big money. So it really starts at the top like that. And then for anyone who works at a corporation, if you're looking to support, there's so many amazing things already happening. We were talking about that on our call, like instead of every time reinventing the wheel and being siloed, like not talking to each other, like support, there's already tons of great organizations right here and all around. So kind of putting your money where your mouth is, and really instead of going just beyond PR and ad lib, like really how do you measure success and not letting just the women at the company run the women event. We've had amazing, she started events, but always the women doing that voluntarily on top of their day jobs, not being, even recognized for it. I'm like, no, like put this as like your priority. Your company is making this a big priority that you actually care and want to make this a success. So put your money where your mouth is and your energy where your mouth is.
Right. Jenny?
I think never show up on a panel or on a stage where there's not diversity. So we broke the rule here. We're all women. But make sure that you're not speaking on a panel or that there's not organizing panel that's all men. And if you're going to run an event, don't have. This is one of the things I like to insist on. I disallow the admins and stuff from being the ones running the event. Certainly disallow them from wearing black dresses and high heels. So unless we're going to get men there in tuxes, I think it's So mind, check your stereotypes. Make sure that you've got diversity in the room.
Great. Suma?
So beyond fundraising and that, I think empowering in your own spaces, right, and trying to create those kind of spaces to attract diversity, in whatever teams you lead, right, or in whatever offices you're in or wherever you are, and being aware of the space you take up. There's probably a lot of powerful people in this room, and it's surprising to me how many people aren't always aware of how much space they take up, whether it's because of class privilege or because of color privilege or sexuality privilege or whatnot, but being cognizant of who else is in the room with you.
Great. Victoria?
Well, mine are easy. So if you are an investor or you're in a large company that would consider investing, please come talk to me about the fund. We do have a $10 million lead that is a major global institution. I can't name it publicly, but I can tell people one-on-one. And we're aiming to raise $100 million so that we can make a big difference and be a big player on the stage. So that's for investors in the room. If you're an individual investor and you want to do some direct investing, we have a lot of fun at ASCII Angels. You can come talk to us about that. That's a good time. If you're an expert in something, come talk to me about being an advisor in the community. We connect advisors to the entrepreneurs all the time. We have a platform on which we do it. There's some amazing connections that have been made through the ASTIA Advisor Network. And then if you're an entrepreneur, come talk to me as well. We are always seeking applications and definitely want to get any entrepreneur into our system. So
Great. And I will just add on behalf of NYSCI, I can tell you from firsthand witnessing of the impact that NYSCI has with its programs, its museum, its design, make, play philosophy, and how to engage children in the delight of STEM learning, and the research it does. So the science behind NYSCI is phenomenal. So I thank all of you who are current supporters, and I ask the rest of you to consider learning more about NYSCI and seeing how you can contribute. And by the way, one of the things, actually, Gina, I don't remember if you mentioned this, but we have a STEM learning series that we have. And on March 8th, we have a Women in STEM night where we bring together the students from high school with professionals in the STEM industry to really talk about careers and internship opportunities, etc. So if you are interested in attending, bring your kids, your grandkids. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to get a real live exposure to STEM. So that will be my ask of you tonight. With that, should we open it up for questions? Okay, sorry we monopolized, but we started a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Bobby Taylor. Suma, was it you who said there isn't an organization founded? I recommend that everybody think about that. I founded about 10 organizations, and one board that I started, Jean is on now. So that's 28 years later. I think the point is that everything we do, we need to do in concert. We need to know about it. We have social media. There's not enough information about what you're saying and what you're doing and what you've accomplished for you to set the role model. So who's going to change that?
But that's fair, and we don't do enough to promote ourselves,
No.
and that's sort of a fundamental challenge that we have. Even myself, I was thinking about, well, what do I say about myself? And maybe I'll just jump to the panel. So we do have this sort of, I don't know if it's a confidence, maybe it's a humility. Maybe we're a little too humble.
We also need support. That's why I was saying, like, don't always reinvent the wheel if stuff is out there that you need to support. Like, I mean, in case of our film, like, it's literally 2 of us. Like, that's it. There's no big PR company, big whatever. We've been doing everything ourselves with hiring people, and like, we can always use more support, like, and all those organizations too. So, I mean, we want to promote as much as we can, but there's only so much we can do, and we need more support. Let's be honest. Like, we do need more people to, again, put their money and their energy where those organizations exist.
So Nora, if we have people in the audience that are working at a company or schools or what have you that are interested in doing a screening, should they
They either
contact
talk
you?
to me or go on shestartedfilm.com, but otherwise I'm very easy to find. You can stalk me, I'll answer. No problem.
Great, and I certainly highly recommend that.
I recommend it too.
Well, let's give a great big round to these supernovas sitting here.